Hey, Reddit, I need to lay this all out and hear your judgment. My family mom, dad, and older brother kept my adoption a secret for my entire life, then tried to manipulate me into giving up my inherited house to cover my brother's fake emergency. When I uncovered their web of lies, I exposed them in front of our whole town at my grandmother's funeral. It felt like breaking free from decades of control, but now I'm the black sheep, and half my family and neighbors think I'm a monster. Was I the asshole for how I handled it? This is a long, messy saga, 20,000 characters of betrayal, truth, and small-town drama. So grab a drink, maybe a snack, and buckle up. I'm Ellie Harper, born and raised in Newberg, Oregon, a small town nestled in the Willamette Valley where the air carries the scent of pine, damp moss, and vineyard grapes. Newberg's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, your parents' names, and what you had for dinner last Tuesday. My mom, Diane, 55F, was the town's golden girl head of the church bake sale, PTA president, always in a navy blazer with a smile that could sell you a used car. She was a master of appearances, her laugh a little too loud, her hugs a little too tight, like she was performing for an invisible audience. My dad, Robert, 57 Chasme, was her opposite stoic, an accountant with a permanent frown who spoke in clipped sentences and expected the world to fall in line. My older brother, Ethan, 32M, was their masterpiece high school quarterback, prom king, the guy who could charm a nun into buying him a beer. And me? I was the quiet one, the sensitive one, always trailing behind, feeling like I was renting space in my own family. Growing up, I knew I was different. Ethan had mom's hazel eyes, dad's square jaw, and their easy confidence. I had unruly dark curls, freckles across my nose, and a shyness that made me shrink in crowds. Ethan teased me mercilessly, saying I was swapped at birth or the milkman's kid. I'd laugh, but the words burrowed deep. At family reunions, aunts would cluck their tongues, cousins would whisper, and I'd catch mom steering conversations away from my baby photos. Ellie's just unique, she'd say, her smile tight. I asked once at age 10 why there were no pictures of me as a newborn. Mom snapped, "We lost them in a move," and changed the subject. I stopped asking, but the questions never stopped haunting me. The one person who made me feel like I belonged was my grandmother, Nana June. She lived in a cozy cottage on the edge of town, with a sagging porch, roses climbing the fence, and a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and secrets. Nana was a rebel backpacked Europe in the 70s, protested for women's rights, and never cared what Newberg thought of her. She'd pull me onto her lap, braid my hair, and tell me stories about hitchhiking through Morocco or sneaking into Woodstock. "You've got my wild heart, Ellie," she'd say, her eyes twinkling. Her cottage was my refuge summers, spent weeding her garden, winters curled up by her fireplace with her old travel journals. When she died last year at 82, it felt like losing the only anchor I had. Nana June's will was read in her lawyer's stuffy office a month after her death. I sat between Mom and Ethan, my hands sweaty, expecting nothing more than maybe her collection of vintage postcards. When the lawyer said Nana left me her cottage valued at $300,000, I froze. Ethan got her cherry red Mustang and $20,000 in savings, a generous haul, but his face turned purple. "Why does Ellie get the house?" he spat, slamming his fist on the table. Mom shushed him, her eyes darting to me like I'd committed a crime. Dad muttered, "It's fine," but his jaw twitched. I didn't understand their fury. I wasn't planning to sell the cottage. It was Nana's soul, my safe place. I wanted to move in, fix the creaky floors, plant the garden she'd always dreamed of. The pressure started the next day. Ethan called me at 7 a.m., his voice syrupy with fake concern. "Ellie, my son Caleb's sick, a rare heart condition. We need to sell Nana's house to pay for surgery." Caleb, my 6-month-old nephew, was a chubby, giggling baby I adored. The thought of him suffering hit me like a punch. Ethan said the bills were in the hundreds of thousands, and without the house money, Caleb wouldn't make it. Mom piled on at Sunday dinner, her voice trembling. "Family sacrifices, Ellie. You're his aunt. How can you sit there eating roast while he's dying?" Dad's approach was colder, his eyes boring into me. "You owe us. We raised you. Put a roof over your head." That word, owe, felt like a chain tightening around my neck. What did I owe them? A childhood of feeling like I didn't belong? Being told to stop overreacting when Ethan locked me in the basement for fun? I started to crack. I called a realtor, got an appraisal, even drove to the cottage to say goodbye, my heart breaking as I touched the rose bushes. But doubts crept in. Ethan was vague about Caleb's illness. No hospital name, no doctor's contact, just trust me. When I asked for medical records, he exploded, "You're heartless, Ellie. You want proof while my son's dying?" Mom sobbed on cue, saying I was tearing the family apart. Dad just shook his head like I'd failed some unspoken test. I couldn't sleep, torn between love for Caleb and a gut feeling I was being played. Then, 10 days before Nana's funeral, I got a call from Mrs. Carter, Nana's best friend, who was sorting through her attic. Her voice was low, urgent. "Ellie, did you know you were adopted?" My world tilted. Adopted? No one had ever told me. Mrs. Carter emailed me scans. A birth certificate listing a young couple in Seattle as my parents, adoption papers signed by Diane and Robert when I was 3 months old, and a handwritten letter from Nana June. In it, Nana wrote, "I begged Diane to tell Ellie the truth, but she said it would break her spirit. I regret my silence. Ellie deserves to know she's loved for who she is, not what she can give." My hands shook as I read it, tears blurring the screen. My entire life was a lie. I drove to Mom's house that night, the papers in a manila envelope. She was in the kitchen baking cookies for church, her apron dusted with flour. I laid the documents on the counter. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was barely a whisper. She froze, then crumpled, sobbing. "We didn't want you to feel less. You're our daughter." But it wasn't love in her eyes. It was fear, like I'd caught her stealing. She admitted they'd adopted me after struggling to conceive after Ethan, but swore it didn't matter. Then the truth spilled out. Ethan had known since he was a teenager, when he overheard Mom and Dad arguing about the adoption paperwork. He'd used it to torment me, spreading rumors at school that I was the stray, laughing when I came home crying. In Caleb's heart condition, a complete fabrication. A friend at Ethan's bank, Jenny, sent me screenshots of his account over 50,000 in withdrawals to offshore betting sites. He owed money to a loan shark, and the house was his bailout. Mom and Dad knew, had planned the guilt trip, banking on my debt to them as their adopted child to make me comply. I was shattered, 28 years of lies, my identity a secret, and now they were using it to steal Nana's gift. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went cold, like ice forming over a river. They'd controlled my story my whole life, but I was done being their prop. Nana's funeral was coming up. A grand affair at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, with family, friends, and half of Newburgh attending. I decided that was my moment, not to destroy Nana's memory, but to honor her by telling the truth she'd wanted me to know. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was claiming my voice in a town that had watched me shrink for years. I spent a week preparing, my apartment floor covered in papers and sticky notes. I copied the adoption documents, Nana's letter, and Jenny's bank screenshots. I found a text thread between Ethan and Mom, saved on an old phone he'd left at my place, where they laughed about breaking Ellie and she'll cave if we mention the kid. I hired a private investigator, a guy named Tom from Portland, to dig deeper. He confirmed Ethan's gambling debts and found a police report linking him to a loan shark named Vince, who'd been harassing Ethan's wife, Sarah. I compiled everything on a USB drive and printed 3 sets of documents, each in a sleek black folder labeled Truth in silver marker. I rented a portable projector from a local AV shop, tested it in my living room to ensure the texts and records would display clearly. I wrote my speech on index cards, practicing until my voice didn't shake. Short, factual, undeniable. I wasn't going to let them dismiss me as hysterical anymore. I called my friend Laura, a paralegal in Portland, to cover my bases. She warned me about defamation risks, but said the documents were solid proof. "Just be sure, Ellie," she said. "This'll burn bridges." I was sure. I wasn't just burning bridges, I was tearing down the whole damn town they'd built on my silence. The night before the funeral, I sat in Nana's cottage, the air heavy with dust and memories. I touched her old typewriter, her chipped teacups, and whispered, "This is for you, Nana." I slept on her couch, dreaming of her laughter, ready to face the storm. The funeral was on a gray, drizzly Saturday, the kind of Oregon day where the sky feels like it's grieving too, Saint. Paul's was packed pews, filled with mourners in black, the altar draped in lilies, Nana's photo smiling from a gold frame. The organ hummed softly and whispers rippled through the crowd. Ethan spoke first, his voice cracking as he painted himself as Nana's devoted grandson, tears glistening for the audience. "She taught me love," he said, clutching the podium. I bit my tongue, tasting blood. Mom and Dad sat in the front pew, Mom dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Dad's face a mask of solemnity. I was scheduled to read a poem, Wild Geese, by Mary Oliver, one of Nana's favorites. My hands were clammy as I walked to the podium, my black dress swishing, the folder and USB tucked under my arm. The projector was set up discreetly behind the altar, plugged in by a sympathetic church volunteer I'd tipped off. I set the folder down, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Nana June was my hero, I began, looking out at the sea of faces, cousins, neighbors, old teachers. She saw me when no one else did. But there's a truth she wanted me to know, and I'm sharing it now, for her. I held up the adoption papers, my hands unwavering. I was adopted at 3 months old. My family hid it from me for 28 years, made me feel like I owed them for breathing. And now, they're guilting me into giving up Nana's house for Ethan's emergency, a lie. There's no sick baby. Ethan's drowning in gambling debts, and they all knew it. I plugged the USB into the projector, and the screen behind me lit up with Ethan's texts. "Ellie's soft. She'll crack if we push." Bank records showed 50,000 in betting withdrawals. The church gasped, a collective inhale that sucked the air from the room. A cousin's hymn book hit the floor with a thud. Ethan's face drained of color. Mom clutched Dad's arm, whispering, "No, no, no." Dad's eyes locked on mine, not with guilt, but fury. I kept going, my voice cutting through the chaos. Nana left me the house because she knew the truth. She knew I deserved something real, not a lifetime of lies. Ethan's been using my adoption to hurt me since we were kids, calling me the stray. Mom and Dad let him, planned this scam to save him, not Caleb. I held up Nana's letter, reading her words, "Ellie deserves to know she's loved for who she is." The crowd was a mix of shock and murmurs. Some glared at Ethan, others stared at me like I'd defiled a shrine. Mom stood, her voice a shriek. "Ellie, how dare you ruin Nana's day? You're tearing this family apart." I met her eyes calm as a lake. "You did that when you lied to me for 28 years. I'm just telling the truth." I placed the folder on the podium, opened to the adoption papers, and walked down the aisle. Ethan lunged for it, but Uncle Mark, a burly farmer, grabbed his arm. "Sit down, boy," he growled. The organist started playing, a frantic attempt to restore order, but I heard Mom's sobs, Ethan's curses, and a cousin shouting, "Is this true?" as I stepped into the rain. The fallout was like a bomb going off in Newburgh. By evening, Sarah, Ethan's wife, had confronted him at their house, demanding answers. Jenny's bank records and Tom's police report confirmed the gambling debts, and Sarah left with Caleb, filing for divorce within days. Ethan's reputation imploded. His boss at the car dealership put him on leave, and the loan shark, Vince, started circling, leaving threatening voicemails. Mom and Dad went silent, disowning me with a single voicemail. "You're no daughter of ours." The town split down the middle, half called me a hero. Mrs. Carter sent me a pie and a note saying, "Nana's cheering from heaven." My cousin Rachel, who'd always been kind, invited me to her book club, saying, "We never liked Ethan's ego." But the other half branded me a traitor. Church ladies whispered at the grocery store, calling me that girl who ruined the funeral. A neighbor left a note on my car. "Shame on you." I became Newburgh's favorite gossip, my name tossed around like a scandalous headline. I moved into Nana's cottage the next week, leaving my cramped apartment behind. The house felt alive, creaking with memories. Nana's laughter, her jasmine perfume, her dog-eared travel books. I started fixing it up, sanding the porch, painting the walls a soft sage green, planting roses and lavender in the garden. I found Nana's old journal under a floorboard, filled with sketches of places she'd been, and a note tucked inside. For Ellie, my wild heart. Don't let them tame you. I cried then, the first time since the funeral, not from pain, but from love. I'm seeing a therapist now, unpacking the adoption bombshell and the years of feeling like an outsider. She says I'm grieving not just Nana, but the family I thought I had. I'm dating too, a quiet carpenter named Sam, who listens when I talk about Nana and doesn't care about the town's gossip, but the guilt gnaws at me. Nana's funeral was meant to celebrate her, and I turned it into a courtroom. I could have confronted them privately, maybe at a family meeting, but would they have listened? Or would they have gaslighted me, banking on my silence like always? I feel free, like I'm finally Ellie Harper, not Diane's daughter or Ethan's sister. The cottage is my home, my truth is out, and I'm building a life that's mine. But the cost was steep family ties severed, Newberg's judgment, and a lingering fear I dishonored Nana's memory. Did I go too far, choosing her funeral as my stage?